So hello, everyone. Thank you, and welcome to Remote Fest. We're here today for another fantastic session on inclusivity in remote working teams. Right, it's incredibly important. The new world order that we're all living in post pandemic. We were all plunged into. Technological We were all sort of forced into adopting technology faster than anything else could have led that to happening, but that has also led to some other fantastic things like having completely global remote working teams. But um, what what we want to discuss today is the inclusivity and the cultural aspect of having remote working teams, because what that essentially and inherently means is that you have a global workforce. So uh, we have a fantastic panel today, and I'm excited to introduce them. So we have Mr. Kesavan Kanchi, who is an experienced media and tech professional with a deep expertise in designing and building software for online content, communities, and commerce. So he's led the launch of Amazon Prime Video in India, which is huge. He was the country head for Symphony Talent, and currently serves as the CEO for ishield.ai. Kesavan, thank you very much once again. We're really happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Other than Kesavan, we have Kamal. Kamal is the CEO and co-founder for Remote Pass, which is a global hiring, onboarding, and payroll solution. We also have with us Azfar. Azfar, it's fantastic to have you here. Azfar is a seasoned HR management professional experienced in all pillars of HR on a global scale, and currently serves as the head of people and culture for global engineering at Swivel. Asfer, thank you for your time as well. So I guess we'll jump right in. The pandemic has changed the world forever, and all our lives with it, right? So, but 16% of the companies in the world are now completely remote, with an additional 40% offering hybrid working models. So we're in unprecedented grounds. We're in 2022. This has never happened before. So we're going to talk about the cultural aspect of it all. So I think, Kesavan, we're going to start with you with our first question. We're going to uh, hear your thoughts on the need for inclusive communications, right? The need for inclusive communications amongst global teams, and the importance of being aware of cultural sensitivity, right? So
Yeah.
over to you. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you. Uh, Whether it is a remote team or a team that we are working with directly in person, we would truly love when people bring their authentic selves to work, right? And when people bring their authentic selves to work, and that translates into how they contribute or how they align with the purpose of the organization, right? There is enough literature around how when people get aligned with the purpose of the organization and they bring their authentic selves, how they go over and above and contribute. The need for that is very simple, especially if you're working with remote working teams. It is more challenging because you don't have any some of the clues that you would get from an individual when you're meeting them in person. You need to find that out through various means when they're working remotely. So, and there is enough research that talks about how inclusive organizations perform better. They are financially, they perform better. The purchase intent of the products of those organizations goes up. Their hiring rate goes up. So there is enough cases and research that is built around this, and that's primarily the reason why you need an inclusive organization. And in remote working teams, the only touch point or the nerve that connects people is how you communicate with each other, and hence making sure that that is inclusive is of primary importance, right? As we
For
go
sure.
through the panel, I'll talk about what does inclusion mean from an individual point of view. But let me just take a pause here and hear other views, and then I can come back and talk about what does really inclusion mean in communications. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Asfer, we're going to throw you the same question. So the question essentially is, what is the need for inclusive communications amongst global teams, and what is the importance of being aware, culturally aware, and being sensitive about the cultural values of different people.
Thank you so much, Dan. So let's just zoom out for a little bit. And before I get into the inclusivity part, I want to focus on the cultural aspect. Um, why is that so? Is because without culture, honestly, I do not think, and I believe the panelists here, they've had experience on this as well. Without culture, we end up in a situation where we're fragmented, disjointed, and to understand that, that is where inclusivity comes from. So for myself, if I look at it, I see, let's say there's a room. Okay. So we build that room with the values that we have. So every company has a set of values. If you look at it historically, whenever the situation might arise, a company's values barely change because they're the core fundamental pillars of on what the foundation of that organization's belief system is built on. The culture, though, is basically the room that we build. So once you go inside, let's say Azan walks in, or Kemal walks in, or Kesavan walks in, or Azfar walks in. Kemal might bring in a carpet, Azfar might bring in a painting, so on and so forth. So essentially, culture is a decoration that comes in as well. So I will walk into this thing, and the aim of having a thriving culture should be anyone can walk in. Let's say Zen can walk and bring in his own thing, and then just thrive within that system. We don't expect him to change, but expect him to add to that melting pot of culture that we've delivered. Something which is very adamant in remote teams as more and more we become more and more global in this regards as well. Now, this is where the point of inclusivity comes in. Is when you have such a culture, and again, especially focusing on the remote concept where different people from different concepts, different perspectives, different mindsets come in, allowing them to actually work together, that is where the inclusivity factor comes in. That we have to not only enable them to bring in their cultural aspect, but actually let other people be intrigued by those items. At the same time, have the ability for an, let's say, a Zen to come in to us for, tell me, you know what, I've got this, you've got this, I think we can make we work this thing together, or maybe we can do something of project together which might add to this as well. So there's a certain amount of open communication and willingness and an openness to collaborate together, which essentially becomes again part of your culture, a collaborative mindset, having the idea to basically work together in all sorts of dynamics, which essentially what we call in technical terms a matrix-based organization. All of these come in and they are factors of inclusivity. I do have a few other thoughts, but I'd like to pass the mic off to Kemal, just in the essence of time. I'm very sure the other conversations will come in. So, Kemal, mic's all yours.
Thanks, Asfar. Kamal, over to you.
Thank you, Asfar. Thank you, Zain. So yeah, I mean, I join what Kesavan and Asfar said. I mean, the culture is the base, regardless if it's remote or in person. Culture is the base, and of course, you have to build on it once you are on a remote work environment. And one of the, like in our experience, we are fully remote. We've always been fully remote, and I assume that's easier for a company that started remote to find it much easier to deal with the onboarding a culture rather than a company that's already big and moving to a remote setup. And one of the most important things that we found is the onboarding process. When somebody joins, you find that person, and then the person joins, like, what does the onboarding look like? Who are they going to talk to? Because at the end of the day, you want to plan for asynchronous communication. That's key in remote work. So how would you envision that onboarding process in a way that the person feels comfortable, they have access to resources, and they don't feel alone, isolated somewhere, and they have the courage and the ability to communicate and contribute to the vision and express their thoughts in an easy way. So yeah, I mean, culture is the base, and then you add on top of it how you bring that person on board and how you keep that communication going and making them feel part of the team.
Fantastic, thank you, and I definitely agree. We also have a global workforce, and we believe that the only way to sort of grow in a sustainable manner is to make everybody feel comfortable and to have everyone add to everything that remote base is doing, right? So I'd like to talk about a different kind of culture, right? I'd like to talk about company culture and company culture in a remote environment, right? How does a company that has hundreds of employees in tens of countries make sure that everybody is on the same level, they are thinking along the same vision, they have the same values? How do you ensure that remotely? Kesavan, I think I will start with you again, please.
Yeah, I think it's a conventional way of thinking that you will have all people aligned to the same vision. They will think, behave similarly, they will work similarly. That was, I think, old school. I think there is a necessity to redefine what really company culture is, especially when you have teams, as you said, global teams working from different locations. We need to break that down into some very specific pieces of what is important for the organization. For example, if you have a 2-year plan that you created with goals and vision, you would like the whole company to be aligned and working towards that. Subsequently, I think from a culture standpoint, you might have a framework, but how you implement that culture and framework is going to be very different than what it was if everybody were coming and walking into the same office. And so I think there is a need to redefine what that means. But 80% of it is going to be tactical, which is, how are you collaborating? What are the rules of engagement when you collaborate with people? When you send them a message, how soon do you want a response from that person? It's going to be tactical. I think we all don't know the answers entirely of how to build a culture of an organization, especially if it is a completely remote organization yet. But I think we need to redefine what really culture for a remote working team itself is. And the old standards will not work. That's where I would like to say. But maybe start with a few that are the most important ones and make sure everybody is at least communicated. I don't think alignment is a more difficult one, but at least there is a constant communication around what we are working on. The last one final thing that worked for us is 3-year, 5-year visions and goals that we used to talk about in a conventional setup. I don't think is working well in a remote working teams, especially because people don't have that line of sight when you're not walking into the same office and meeting and talking to people about it. So break that down into much shorter, short-term goals that people can aim and work on. Again, I said tactical, but you do have a bunch of core group who are totally aligned and joining all the dots into a larger thread. That's where we can start, and then a lot it needs to be still figured out. How do we build company culture in remote working teams?
Well said. Well said. Unprecedented grounds. Azfar, over to you. Same question. Building and ensuring company culture across the board in remote working teams.
So I think Kesavan's said it very, very accurately that we're in discovery mode right now. We're all trying to find out the best definition of what a company culture in today's environment is really. I would say that the jury's still out on that. Everyone's going to have a different answer. What I can tell you is what worked for us at Swivel. So Swivel being in a situation, 15 countries, 300, 400 plus employees that we have on board, we're very ambitious in what we wanted to do. And with that ambition, the biggest fear that came in was the generation of silos, which basically is counterculture, essentially, at the end of the day. How do we navigate that? So number one, we figured out very early on that communication, honestly speaking, is pretty much going to be the solution to most of our problems. And by communication, we do not mean when we start onboarding. No, it starts way back when we start recruiting people, right at the start. Because an individual, when you start bringing in the company, and this goes back to my previous anecdote where the values basically build that room, is where you need to be able to enable the individual to actually resonate with the values that you have. And that in turn becomes a process where we actually introduce a whole stage in our hiring process, which we call the value-based interview, where we would give them an outlook and outreach of what we are trying to achieve, what we have done so far, and on what grounds have we been able to achieve said achievements. So it's been a process where initially we started all the way back in the first round. Like that's what our talent acquisition partner will start the conversation with, take it all the way over. Then we'll have like a excuse me, a dedicated onboarding session. This is not conventional onboarding. I put away that thing. I can just use this term just because I don't have another term for it, but this is more of an acclimatization within the organization. So there are components to that, such as having buddy systems. There are components to actually getting to know what the company has achieved and what they're trying to achieve. 6 monthly goals, combine that with an OKR function where we enable individuals to drive bottom up their own success. And bottom up is a very important aspect of this thing, because this allows the individual to actually voice his own methodology or his own method to the madness, essentially, on how he wants to contribute to the overall vision of the company. So as long as you're pointing towards that one direction, this helps. And then combine that with the concept of servant leadership, it actually helps create that culture. So whether you're remote or hybrid or anything, you can drive results out of these things. So these are more practical examples of what we've implemented over the past 2 years on how we've been able to achieve success at Swivel for this particular point in time.
Thanks, Azfar. Kamal, over to you. Same question. You also have a multicultural, multinational team. So how do you do it? How do you build a company culture?
Yeah, I mean, in our case, we went from like 3 or 4 countries. Today, we have team members in 17 different countries. And I mean, it's work in progress. I wouldn't say that we nailed it. It's a work in progress. We're learning new things all the time. And then we get even people that start with us we do a session at the end of the onboarding process. Like once they are fully onboarded and ready to contribute, we do a session with them to learn how can we improve that? Like what are the areas? And like, to be honest, every 2 months, there is something new that is added to that process. Another thing is setting expectations when it comes to communication. So, because a lot of communication will happen asynchronously, so setting expectations, and that is something that's super important. And also another thing to get people up to speed and included in the game as fast as possible is to making every person an owner of specific KPI. So that pushes them to talk to others. I mean, we do set them up with buddies and then random Slack conversations that get started. They get connected with someone from the team that might not be from the same department, but yeah, a combination of things, and it's a work in progress. And I'm sure in the next 3 to 6 months, it will look a lot different.
You will certainly be improving upon it even further. So I think we have just enough time for one quick question. What are some of the best practices that you are aware of, that you've tried and tested, that you know works when it comes to building inclusive remote teams, right? So Kesavan, over to you. If you could list down a few things that worked really well for you, for the audience and for us, that'd be great.
Yeah. The first thing that we need to look at, especially in remote communications, is have a very clear terms of engagement communicated well to people. I think across different cultures, like I will meet you in 1 minute means very different things across different cultures, right?
Well said.
So it is very important that we first lay down the terms of engagement when we are working with multiple teams. And then there is a second aspect, which is we are all defined by our identities and preferences, right? And these identities could be, geography, culture, organizations, brand values, our own individual preferences, So, of course, you cannot. It is difficult to have very customized identity-specific communication to everyone, but it is easier to at least make sure that you don't have biases in the way you communicate to people, right? So there are two things that we can get started with. I'm giving a quick answer. Yeah, have a terms of engagement that everybody can agree to. And the other is, work consciously to make sure that we don't have biases creep into our communication, so that we take the first step towards having a more inclusive organization.
Very well said. Thank you. Azfar, over to you. Same question.
So I'll keep this very short. So be very deliberate in your communication. That's number one. And that goes across every level. Number two, create an environment of transparency and respectfulness, because honestly, respect is a two-way street, and in an environment where you might be sitting in different places, if you do not respect the ideology or the identity, as Kesavan put it very nicely, there is bound to be issues in that regard. And thirdly, which is something that the company should be really focused on, is like, yes, there is always time for work, but have a platform where you can also let off some steam, which sounds very generic, but it is very, very important in today's day and age with the screen fatigue that we have, everyone sitting at home, and with the lives just melting together. If we don't have that outlet, that's really difficult. And more often than not, tech companies, the pace at which we work at, providing an outlet with internally actually engages in better communication and better inclusivity at the end of the day as well.
Right. Thank you. Kamal, same question.
From my end, I would say it's expectations in terms of communication. To join what Kesavan said, you have different expectations when you talk to different people from different cultures, and diversity usually brings some improvements to that process from what we've seen. And the second thing is to recognize success, share it with everyone. If you use Slack, and get everyone involved to cheer for whoever has succeeded at something. And yeah, so that's my short
Fantastic.
answer.
Fantastic. Gentlemen, thank you so very much for your time. It was absolutely wonderful talking to all of you. Thank you for sharing all your experiences and your information. And thank you, most importantly, for taking out time for us on a Sunday. So I hope you also had a good time, and I hope to see all of you very soon, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Pleasure. Bye.
Thank you.